Welcome to the Ectohead channel. So, 3-eye atlas. It's interesting, isn't it? Interesting that a second or third, depending on how you want to look at it, interstellar object, note I didn't say comet, enters our solar system. The first being Oumuamua, which we only caught apparently when it was on its way back out again. I find that very hard to believe. If I didn't know any better, I'd think that the people in charge, NASA, etc., had eyes on the object. And the information got out, and then it's like, oh look, there's something leaving. That's kind of how it felt to me. And then you've got Comet Borisov, which I think was a comet. It displayed all the symptoms and signs. Symptoms? All the signs of a comet. And then we get 3-eye atlas. That doesn't display all the signs of a comet. It actually displays really none of the signs of a comet and all the signs of something else. Why are we spotting these things now? Why, in the period of a few years, do we have 2 interstellar unknown objects passing through? And do they have anything to do with Voyager? For those who don't know, years and years ago, we sent out a couple of ships called Voyager. I think the second one's Voyager 2, is it? And they had invitations on them. A plaque, a gold plaque, which showed what we looked like, naked, not very pretty. Our position in this solar system and a map of our solar system. The planet sort of laid out. And then we sent another one, which was basically a gold record. And it had sounds from Earth on it and, a voice message. And even at the time, questions were asked. Is this a wise decision? Because we don't know who's going to get this invitation. But scientists being scientists felt, credibly I think, that any civilization smart enough to understand the messages attached to these ships, assuming they ever found these ships, would be sufficiently advanced enough to be past all those petty little differences that we suffer here, which result so often in war and violence. And who knows, they may show up and teach us a thing or two about humanity. We get these 2 objects, which appear to have emanated in space from the direction that Voyager was going into. That's one hell of a coincidence. Space is a big place. So we must ask ourselves, seriously, I think, about whether or not somebody or something has picked up this message, this invitation. And they've spent a short while looking. They've retraced Voyager's path backwards in order to ascertain where it came from. And it will have led them to our solar system. What would you do if you were an advanced race? Well, you don't know who sent the invitation. You have a representation of them, but you're not going to send out your people. Not in the first instance. You'd send out a probe or two, maybe, just to check the coast was clear. Just to get eyes on the target, so to speak. And then those probes would, on a large orbit, swing back around and send that information back, or go back to the point of origin and deliver the information one-to-one. This whole subject of Three-Eye Atlas is problematic for us because as it rounds and goes behind the sun, a convenient series of words to give the impression that it would be hidden by the sun, but in fact it went behind the sun and above it. So only in terms of its trajectory is it behind the sun. We do have a view of it, but the sun's very bright, so it's kind of obscured. Though there are instruments, excuse me, though there are instruments that can see. So it comes at its closest pass to us. NASA has a bunch of instruments trained on the object, one would imagine, and we're going to get a shed load of pictures. Mystery solved. Is it a comet? Isn't it a comet? But no. The American government shuts down, and for some inconceivable reason, citing attachments to the government, NASA shuts down. Now we know that NASA is full of government employees, but are you really telling me that there aren't a couple of people at NASA looking at this instrumentation, taking it down, ready for dissemination and analysis? Are you telling me, seriously, there's nobody at NASA? They've locked the doors up. What about all the mission specialists looking out for the International Space Station? In addition, there's an interplanetary defense grid that has been trained. Its sensors have been trained on Three-Eye Atlas. The information was reported, but it was kept all a bit hush-hush on the QT. There are all kinds of rumours. We could start with Gary McKinnon, who back in the early 2000s broke in to a bunch of government computers in the US and was caught and faced extradition. In possibly the only good act that Theresa May did as the British Prime Minister at the time, she refused his extradition. It was obvious that he was going to go to a trumped-up kangaroo court in the US and be made an example of. The US said that he caused tens of thousands or millions of pounds or rather dollars of damage to the computer systems. And yet they didn't dispute his version of events, that when he went looking via dial-up, that's, for those of you who don't know, the old way of connecting peers on the internet as it was back then. A slow and cumbersome process, to say the very least. He used default passwords. Most of the places he went to, in fact the majority, had their default passwords, which, as it turned out, was 0000 or 1234. So in using his dial-up connection, he input default passwords and he was labelled as having broken in. I don't know about you, but if I leave my door open and someone comes in, they may be trespassing, but they haven't broken in. he then finds, after months apparently of trawling through various machines, a program name, which sounds interesting to him. So he goes into the program name, which was wrong. He shouldn't be doing this, let me be clear. And he sees a list titled Off-World Officers or Personnel and Off-World Ships, or something of that description. Now, Gary McKinnon tried to download an image, and I suggest you look it up. I don't want to take his thunder or tell his story. But it still didn't change the fact that on an official machine, in an official establishment, there was a program titled Off-World Officers and Off-World Inventory or Ships or Fleet or something like that. And for anyone who wants to say, oh, there was nothing there, they were throwing the book at him. Like 200 years in jail or something. The secret space program, as it became called, started all kinds of rumours. The largest and grandest of which was a story called Project Serpo, where we apparently met up with aliens here on Earth. These meetings then progressed, and as I say, an exchange program was developed. We would take 3 or 4 of their aliens, and we sent up a bunch of astronauts to go to their home planet, which apparently was a planet in the Zeta Reticuli system. And they spent a few years up there. Very interesting story. Whether you think it's hogwash or not is another matter. But if you're interested in a great story, look up Project Serpo, SERPO, the Alien Exchange Program. Great story. And we have, the human race, an entire fleet of ships. And we travel the stars. Cryptically and really annoyingly, man who headed up the most secret and inventive organization of the US Air Force that dealt in manufacturing the most technically advanced planes that the human race has ever seen, Ben Rich of the Skunk Works, which was originally called Skunk Works. Americans, they're very strange, aren't they? Said before he died, we've taken E.T. home. Whatever you've seen on TV and film, we've already done it or decided it wasn't worth it. Three-Eye Atlas, regardless of what it is much more than just a story. My personal feeling right now is there's every possibility that it could be a probe. I rather fancy the idea that it's an old probe, ancient. And, oddly enough, this takes us into Rendezvous with Rama, a book by Arthur C. Clarke. An interstellar object finds its way to Earth. And we go out to intercept it in order to find out what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Three-Eye Atlas and the secret space program. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like, share, and subscribe. If you like the content, it will mean that you get to hear more of it. Until next time, bye-bye.